Hello, I'm Carla. Today we are going to talk about anorexia nervosa. A lot of people have heard about it, but not many people understand it well. And for good reason. It's pretty complex, but we're going to break things down in a clear, straightforward way. First of all, anorexia isn't about food. That might surprise you, but the fact is that food is just the tool. The true issues are usually anxiety, control, identity, and a brain that has built a complex pattern that appears simple to the person, which is that restricting food means feeling better. A quick note, I'm going to talk about how anorexia works, not methods of restriction. This will help you to understand anorexia, but it is not a playbook on how to develop it. If any of this feels familiar for you or someone you care about, you deserve real support. The suffering that anorexia will eventually trigger will get worse over time without a change and can lead to severe impairment or death. But remember, it is very treatable, and suffering is not necessary. The first things to understand are the conditions that tend to exist before anorexia develops. First, there is often a certain personality and a situation which creates a particular type of vulnerability, plus a spark which ignites certain behaviors. Most people who develop restrictive type anorexia already have some combination of traits like high anxiety and a strong need to avoid any harm. Another thing is perfectionism, along with a strong tendency to be very rule-driven and self-critical. This means there is comfort in doing things very right and dread when the mark is even slightly missed. The next thing is called cognitive rigidity. That means having difficulty being flexible in thinking and behavior, especially under stress. Predictability feels calming, so there is a tendency toward implementing multiple self-imposed and unchangeable structures or rules in daily life. With all of this as background, there is then a life moment that feels destabilizing or overwhelming. It could be puberty, performance pressure, loss, bullying, trauma, a big transition, or deeply feeling not enough. Then comes the spark, which starts behaviors in a certain direction, dieting, clean eating, illness, or a comment that lands like a grenade. That all sets the stage. Next comes the reward and reinforcement of the behavior that was sparked. Restriction can bring short-term rewards like feeling accomplished as you move toward lower weight, having rules and rigid patterns that provide predictability, and in many societies, social reinforcement such as compliments, envy from others for the discipline being shown, and praise for the initial weight loss. Early on, restriction is often goal-directed. The goals are attracting more of the early rewards, and control, with the focus of the control being food and weight. There is often an unconscious belief that achieving that control will make feelings feel better. The thing is that when the goal feels essential, the brain doesn't just think about it, it shapes itself to see anything that leads to the goal as highly rewarding, and anything that takes away from the goal as highly threatening. And eventually, with the depleting impact of starvation, the person actually loses control to those thoughts and fears. Even with this, the behaviors can still lead to a meaningful drop in anxiety and a stronger feeling of self-worth. Biology may play a role here. Research suggests that the serotonin systems involved in anxiety and inhibition can be atypical in people with anorexia and may remain altered even after recovery. Starvation itself also shifts serotonin-related chemistry. Essentially, it means that anorexics appear to have too much or high sensitivity to serotonin, which then promotes anxiety. If this seems counter to what you might have heard about serotonin, it is because the sensitivity and experience of serotonin differs between people. In some people, it fosters a sense of stability and calm. In others, such as many anorectics, the feeling may be tightness and agitation. The link with anorectic behavior is that food restriction limits a key building block of serotonin, tryptophan. Reducing food reduces tryptophan, which reduces serotonin, which can then reduce anxiety. This all makes restriction feel quieter and more calming than eating. Now here is the trap that most people miss. When going down this road, starvation changes the mind, not just the body. Once restriction persists, malnutrition and starvation start driving the symptoms and make it feel harder to stop. We've known for decades that food deprivation can increase preoccupation with food, rituals, irritability, social withdrawal, obsessive thinking, as well as anxiety and depressive symptoms. So, the disorder itself creates the very distress that it was trying to reduce. It's a super destructive loop. The next element is that when starvation behavior becomes more entrenched, it gets etched on the brain as a habit, not a choice. At this point, the original goals have been long lost. The sport that was a catalyst cannot be played due to weakness, the social admiration is gone, and the anxiety is high. Though stopping the behaviors creates even higher anxiety. Again, the behaviors no longer feel like a choice. When behaviors shift from trying to reach a goal to I cannot stop because my brain is following a hardwired script, behaviors become ingrained and less sensitive to consequences, meaning even scary health outcomes may not break the loop. Eventually, there is trouble reading internal signals like hunger, fullness, and body state, and even emotion. With all of this, the person's experience often becomes, I know this is hurting me, but my body and brain are firmly set up to continue this behavior, and stopping feels like overwhelming chaos and danger. I hope you can see now why I said anorexia nervosa is complex. The good news is that there are effective therapies that enable recovery. One thing that does not work is simply random force feeding. Think about it. Key drivers are anxiety and the need for control. Force feeding promotes intense anxiety and takes away control. It does not mean that recovery never feels a bit scary, or that medically necessary measures aren't needed at times. It does mean that effective recovery involves many aspects of clarity and support, and should not feel chaotic. It should feel like the world is able to open up safely, and the person is increasingly able to be and appreciate who they really are. If you would like me dig deeper into eating disorders or another topic, just let me know in the comments.